I'm Megan Guerber. I am the interim editor of American Craft magazine. We have been around since 1941. We're currently based in Minneapolis, and there are a couple events I gotta pitch while I got a microphone and your attention. The first is an incredible exhibition at the Minnesota Museum of American Art, which is looking at the history of our magazine and as well as the history of this museum and sort of how our paths intersected in numerous ways. So you'll find objects on view that were featured in the pages of Craft Horizons. That was what our magazine used to be called until 1980, as well as new work on view by local artists that is looking towards the future of craft, sort of how the field is changing. We're also having a party tonight. So the American Craft Council, it's like a 12-minute Lyft ride from here. We have a fabulous archive. If any of you are artists who do research, please look up our library. It's incredible. We have a fabulous archive dating back to 1941, filled with artist files. So come check us out and come hang with us tonight and have some drinks. Okay. So I'm speaking to you today as an editor, but I've worn many hats in the arts field. So I've been an artist, I've also been a curator, working in a gallery, I've done public artwork, I've been a part of public art projects, and now I'm in publishing. So I can talk to you about the value of artist statements from many perspectives. And I'm not going to get super deep because there are so many different things that you can talk about in terms of artist statements. I am mostly here to give you some basic steps for moving forward because they're super intimidating to write, and also to help you find some focus in your practice. So, all right, let's get started. Okay, so first of all, I want to share that I've never met anyone who has felt confident about their artist statement. I reached out to 3 artists to see if I could include their statements in this presentation, and they all were like, what? I hate that thing, it doesn't feel right. And that's because art is really complicated, right? And so are you as artists. You can't get it all in your statement. The statement really is a marketing tool. It's how you get work. It's how curators know what you're making work about. It's how editors know what you're making work about. It's how a general audience knows what you're making work about. We just want to know why you're making your work, what you're saying with it, and why that matters right now. I think oftentimes artist statements can feel like this sort of mystical thing that fully encompasses everything that you do, and is like, there's some like magic potion you have to take to get it right, and it's just not true at all. They are a marketing tool. They're a business tool, and I think when you think about them that way, that relieves a little bit of pressure. I'm going to walk you through how to put together a really short, straightforward artist statement. This is like step 1. This is like something to get you started, but it can grow from there. There are many, artist statements can take many shapes. They can be long, they can be short. And the ACC should be, I'm hoping that we'll be working on developing tools to help you move on to the next step after getting your basic statement together. So anyway, what's the point of an artist statement? It explains your work when you're not there to do so. So it tells audiences what you made, why you made it, and why it matters. I think how you made it also is something that can or cannot be important in your statement. And that's something that you gotta look at on your own and get feedback from different people on. As I said, it's used by people like me who curate publications or shows to know if your work is a good fit for the themes that we're thinking about. It's also used by marketing to help promote a show that might feature your work or a publication that might be featuring your work. So that's why it's so important to be clear what it's about. There's a lot of room for misinterpretation. You want to be as clear as possible. And then finally, it's just used by a wide general audience just to learn about you. So you want people to know what you're doing. So a lot of people are like, okay, great, but I'm not a writer, so I'm never going to make a great statement. But I really think writing is like a trade, right? There are people who are just like magically gifted, and they're brilliant writers and communicators. But most of us, and I'm including myself in this category, learned it just by doing it all the time. So it's the same as learning how to throw on a wheel. You know, I'm not saying that everyone's gifted at it, but you can learn the basic skills, and if you keep practicing, you're gonna get better and better. So please don't be intimidated. This is a skill, this is a muscle you can build. And part of the way that you build that muscle is by breaking down the process. And also, if any of you are taking notes, I just want you to know I do have really helpful guides up front, and they're on paper, they're old school, so I welcome you to grab those afterwards. Not everything in this slideshow is on there, but a lot of the most helpful material is. So anyway, this is the process of writing a statement that I advise you to follow. And it's just sort of like your workout regiment or something like that. So you want to start by generating ideas. You take those ideas, you put them into a draft. My coworkers and I put together a template that you can follow, which is a great point for you to start that draft from, and we'll get to that later. After you write your draft, you revise it. After that, you check it for errors, right? So you want to focus on getting your thoughts out first, and then you want to focus on the language rules. After that, you totally want to get feedback if you can. It's so helpful. There's this saying, even editors need editors, and it's so true. Finally, revise it, go back and check for spelling and grammar errors, word choice errors again. So here are just a few tips to help you out. Writing an artist statement is iterative. So you don't write one and then you're done for the rest of your life. You like your practice, your artist statement is gonna change. I think level 2 of writing an artist statement, if we're gonna be like at level 1 right now, level 2 is adjusting it to fit the needs of a certain gallery or residency or school that you're applying for. It's sort of like putting together a cover letter for when you're applying for a job, right? You look to see what this organization or business you're applying for, what their values are, and then you show them how you reflect those values in your work. That's similar in your artist statement. That's level 2. We'll focus on level 1 now. You want to remember that you're writing for people. You want to write as if people don't know anything about you or your work. You need to explain anything. You need to explain that. What am I trying to say? You need to explain everything so that anyone can understand it. So if there is a technique that's really important to your practice, you want to make sure to explain that for people. Don't assume that they know, help them. I really encourage you to write how you speak. Use common language. I think that a lot of people, I think culture's changing a little bit, but there's been, for a long time, it's been recommended that we try to impress people, to inflate our language, to seem really smart. I think because of the internet, we're kind of letting go of that. And so I just really encourage you not to try to seem impressive. Be who you are and make it clear. That's what people need. They're not impressed by big words, especially if they're words they don't know, right? You also want to write in the first person, because it's your statement. So write it all from I, like I make this because. Another thing, and I'm just saying this as a former curator and an editor, is that it gets kind of boring if you write generalized statements that are shared amongst artists. Art is important to me. I know it is. It's important to so many people. Edit that out of your statement. Focus instead on the most important ideas you're expressing. Focus on why your work is unique or special or timely. That's what really stands out, and that's what gets people's attention. I also encourage you to be super honest. Along with using big words, people often feel that, or I've noticed that many artists often feel that they need to say that their work is going to change the world or something. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing to do if that is your practice. But if it's not, that's not the only type of work that has value. That's not the only type of work that people are looking for. Be true to who you are. It stands out, and those of us who see artist statements all the time can see when that's not true. So I highly encourage you to be honest. Own who you are. Be super proud of it, because you're doing incredible work. Finally, as I'm going to show, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. So you don't have to pull out of thin air some artist statement. You can totally follow a template. I highly suggest it. Start somewhere, start with a base. From there, it can grow, it can change with you. Don't be afraid. It doesn't mean that you're less of a writer, less of an artist. It's just a tool to help you get this important marketing piece together. Okay, so getting started, right? Because writing an artist statement is intimidating. I don't know anyone who's like, great, I'm gonna do this. I'm gonna sum up my practice in 2 paragraphs, no problem. So what I highly recommend, and what a lot of writers like to do, is to free write, right? So that's when you sit down and you get all your thoughts down on paper. And you just let your brain go wherever it needs to go, and you write until you feel like you got it out of you. However, let's say you're not a writer. Let's say you're not comfortable writing. That's a terrible way to try to start your artist statement. I recommend just talking to a friend instead. You can certainly, most phones have a recording app. You can record it. You can take notes. Just talk about your work. Talk together. Have them ask you questions. And take notes of what stands out. The whole idea of this is gaining focus on what's most important to you. That's the part that you need to put into your statement. Finally, it's just really important to read. That's how you get better, just like practicing, practicing your basic clay skills, right? Good readers make good writers. I highly recommend reading statements, just reading tons of artist statements when you go to shows. Make sure to stop and read them. Super helpful. Pay attention to what you like and what you don't like. Helps you avoid making mistakes. You can certainly read books and magazines. I know not everyone's a huge reader. Just try to follow some really articulate people on social media. See how they're telling stories. I'd recommend following publications too. See how they're condensing stories. It's going to help you figure out how to be a little bit more concise. And again, this is just about lifting weights or whatever to build your muscle. It's going to make you a better writer. So here are some some questions to ask yourself when you're working on your artist statement. These are the things that people want to know about your work. I highly recommend answering these. You don't need to answer all of them. I put down a bunch because everyone's statement's going to be a little different. And some of these will pertain to your work and some won't. But these are great starting points. So ask, why did I make this work? What message do I hope to convey? What responses do I hope to invoke in people and why? That emotional aspect is super important. It's a big part of experiencing your work. Don't be afraid to investigate that in your statement. Also ask yourself what people need to know to understand your work. Explain any references you make, techniques, materials, anything that's important for understanding the work's message or intent. This just makes your work more accessible. The more accessible you make your work, the more opportunities you're gonna get. Another great question is, which aspects of my work and practice are most important for people to take away? And this is because people have short attention spans. Again, speaking as an editor and a curator, I see a lot of artist statements, I see a lot of work. So personally, just from like a institutional standpoint, I don't have time to read a really lengthy piece. The more concise and straightforward and intriguing you can be, the more you have my attention. If I gotta work for it to find out what you're making work about, I probably will have to move on. But there are lots of ways to get my attention, and others like me. There's also I found this really fabulous resource called GYST, which stands for Getting Your Shit Together. This is an artist-run organization. I think they're based in LA. And they have all sorts of resources and online workshops and ways to get feedback. So those, their classes and their review sessions, you have to pay a small fee for those. If you find that you can't get any help on your own, I recommend checking them out. But otherwise, they have just tons of examples of artist statements and other questions to ask yourself. And these were 3 that really stood out to me, so I pulled them out for you to take in. So what am I trying to say in the work? What influences it? And how do my methods of working, techniques, style, formal descriptions support the content? Finally, you gotta write for a general audience, right? So think, how would you explain your art to, excuse me, how would you explain your art to your grandpa, right? I said grandpa because I was just trying to think of someone who might not know a lot about you and what you're doing right now, or be really invested in the art world. Maybe your grandpa is, so apologies. But think about a person who imagine explaining your work to someone who isn't a part of your close inner circle. It's really going to help you make your work more accessible, which again is going to get you more work. Okay, so I pulled a few examples. This is Risa Puno. Risa Puno is she is a public artist in New York who makes a lot of playful work. And I was gonna read her description, but I think I'll just let you kind of take it in while I talk. I pulled this because I thought she did a really exceptional job of explaining what she's trying to do with her work. Now, her work is interactive, it's public, that's her focus. So this makes sense for her. If you're sculpting an object, this statement isn't gonna quite work for you, right? There's another way that you gotta go about it. She's also a younger artist. So this is someone really introducing her ideas and her way of working to get more projects funded. Now you might know this name. Very established, incredible artist with a super diverse practice. You'll notice Ayumi's statement is a little different. So she explains how her projects, because she has many, and her different ways of working reflect her overall point of view. This is a great statement to look at and to follow if you have an established practice, many years of working, and many different ways of working. And it'll help you see how maybe there's a thread that carries through all these different ways of working that you can articulate for your audience. And all these are online too, so you can find these. Finally, I'm gonna add with like avant-garde basket maker Doug Johnston. Doug's artist statement is a little esoteric, but I really, really appreciated how he talks about the process and materials in his statement and how important those are to the work that he's doing. So here's an object maker with exploring big ideas through his objects and explaining the importance of his technique and materials. As you can see, there are a lot of different ways to do this. That's because art is so diverse. So I was hoping that these 3 examples will give you some insight into different approaches you can take. Okay, so now the template, and I gotta hurry up because we're running out of time. So what we put together, and this is all in the packets up front, and they're also online. If we run out of packets, I can give you, it's a long URL, but you can take it and copy it. Ask yourself, what do you make? And write that down. Then ask yourself, why? Why do you make it, and what inspires you? Write that down. Then ask yourself, what is the intent? What do you intend to do, and what's your goal? Why do you make this work? Next, you want to think, what do people need to know to understand your work, right? What context do they need to take away what you're trying to do? And then ask, why does your work matter today? Why do people need to look at your work? Or what are people going to get out of your work today? How does it fit in our contemporary American lives? This is just a template to get you started. You don't have to answer all these questions. They might not all pertain to your work. You might not want to set them up this way, but answering these this is basically the info that people are looking for, I would say, in galleries and publications, and when also schools and residency programs. So these are great questions to ask yourself to really hone in on how to present your work. I'm gonna skip that because I don't think it's very good. But anyway, you can bring all of that together to write about your own unique work. After that, you gotta revise. And I recommend waiting, like at least follow the swimmer's rules, right? Wait at least a half hour. This is because you will see your work with completely fresh eyes if you wait. Time is a luxury that we don't always have, but the more time you give yourself, the more refined your work is going to be, the better you're going to feel about it. You also want to start by, when you write your statement, don't worry about language rules. Just get your thoughts down. After that, when you revise, then start looking at those aspects of writing, the formatting, the spelling. There are tons of great tools to help you with that nowadays. And also, I'm sure you have friends who excel at that, and they're wonderful to tap into. Finally, when you get feedback, I think it's really important to ask pointed questions. Because, as we all know, sometimes you can get a ton of feedback that you just don't need, and you end up feeling bad. So everyone has their own style, everyone has their own approach. You know, your mom might want you to use certain vocabulary words that you feel are very inappropriate for your practice, right? So you want to set her on the right course if this person's giving you feedback to give you the answers that you need and the help that you're seeking. So here are a few questions to ask. What do you understand is the intent of my work? Are there parts of my statement you don't understand, or questions you wish I had answered? Does this statement make you interested in learning more about my work? Why or why not? What is your biggest takeaway from this statement? And then finally, are there grammar, spelling, word choice, or formatting errors, right? So here are a few resources. They're not a lot. They're just a jumping off point. Spelling and grammar, ACC relies heavily on Microsoft Word. We love it. It's a great program. It's a little expensive. You can find it at some public libraries on their open use computers if you don't have your own. You can also find it at most schools. Otherwise, another tool you can use is Grammarly. I'm sure you're familiar with them. They have a ton of commercials out right now. This is a browser extension. So this is also really helpful if you're writing emails, pitching your work. It will catch grammar and spelling errors and help you present yourself in the best way. And it's free. So I highly recommend Grammarly. Also, I wouldn't be afraid to Google answers to grammar questions. That's going to help you learn more about grammar. It's going to make you a better writer and more confident. Finally, GSYT, we already spoke about. They have great tips for artist statements and other resources. And then if you want to improve your writing, so your style, use a thesaurus. They're amazing. Thesaurus.com, that's the one I use. Pretty easy to remember. Super helpful. My former coworker would always say that, when she was editing work, she'd always have Merriam-Webster dictionary open, dictionary page, and thesaurus.com. And she just used those tools constantly, helping people to improve their writing. You could also sign up for newsletters from grammaticians. They're super nerdy. They love to send newsletters. Stephen Wilbur's is one from the University of Minnesota, but there are many others. And then finally, it's an oldie but a goodie, but elements of style. I have another coworker who said it's great to have in your bathroom, just for a quick read, if you find yourself there for a few minutes. I don't know how you feel about that, but it's good to just have the tools around in a place where you can look through them every once in a while. You'll build a lot of knowledge. Oops. And then finally, just remember that when you are seeking feedback, that it isn't personal. It doesn't say anything about you, your talents, your ideas, your art. If you can try to separate yourself from the artist statement and just think of it as this professional tool, sort of like a resume, it'll be a lot easier to refine it. There are strategies that go into it. There's a lot to learn. But just remember, if you get feedback that you need to improve something, this is just to help you succeed. It is not a reflection of your intelligence or talent. You can always go back and rework the statement. Remember, it's iterative. And then even editors need editors. And then finally, you got this. So, okay. I just want to wrap up by asking if anyone noticed what was running through the slides. Yes. There are typos and spelling errors, which just goes to show that you really got to give yourself time. Give yourself time, give feedback. Even editors need editors. So thanks for coming, and let me know if you have questions.